Cool.
Brilliant. Well, maybe even before Bella and I introduce, or you know, kind of give a little bit of an overview of what we're going to talk about this afternoon, maybe it'd be nice to just do like 1-minute intros from everybody, and perhaps we can just pass over to the person who's next to us on the screen. So if I start just by introducing myself, I'm Fee. I coordinate capital growth at Sustain, so that's London's food growing network. And really happy to be here this afternoon. Tony, you're on my right, so I'm going to hand over to you.
Oh, hi, Tony Birch. Let's Grow Brent. It's a community gardening scheme entirely run by volunteers that was basically a spin-off from mutual aid in the south of the borough mainly. And we've got 3 sites, including a brand new one next to a school. And we're growing green vegetables and produce for food banks.
Fab, thanks, Tony. I'm just going to take over and pass over to Julie. I'm just looking at my screen. I hope people don't mind. I'll just jump in. Julie from Providence Row. And you're on mute, Julie.
Right.
Oh, there
Thank
you are.
you. I'm not anymore. Yeah, we grow for our clients. We are a homeless charity. So all the food, there's a couple of food meters from the top to the kitchen, which is wonderful. So we have a lot of volunteers and we have clients who are on training schemes that I run to actually grow our food.
Real, thanks, Julie. And below Julie on my screen is Ellie from Growhampton. Hi, Ellie.
Hey. Yeah, I'm Ellie. I use she, her pronouns. I'm from Growhampton. Growhampton is a food growing project which is based in a student union in southwest London, and we grow vegetables and teach students, staff and community how to grow vegetables, and we sell our produce to our cafe on site. We donate some of our produce and we sell it as part of a veg box scheme, and yeah, we do a lot of stuff with our volunteers. I'll pass on to Bella, who's to my right.
Hey everyone, I'm Bella. I work at Sustain and help run the Good to Grow campaign. So that's the national network of local networks of community gardens, like the network in Manchester, which is called So the City, which is where John's from. He's going to be speaking in a bit. Yeah, that's me, and I will pass on to I don't believe we've had Laura.
I work at Coin Street, and we have Bernie Spain Gardens, which is a public park, but we've got some raised beds and run community gardening sessions there. It's mostly kind of volunteers. We don't have a lot, we don't grow like huge amounts of produce, so we mostly just share it with the volunteers who take part, and we try and have lunch after the session, so we cook anything that we can that and share anything that we've grown. Should I pass on to Ollie?
Hi everyone. I also work at Growhampton in southwest London, so I won't say much more from what Ellie said. I'll pass on. Has Wendy been?
No, I was a little bit late, so sorry for that. I'm Wendy from Incredible Edible Barnet. We have a small growing space outside a church in New Barnet, but the concept of Incredible Edible is to allow people to pick from public places. So we don't really monitor a lot of what we grow because we don't really know. We do have a bed that we grow for food bank, so I can weigh and measure that, but I also grow in an allotment style back garden. So that's where I'm much more of a Harvest-ometer fan, where I weigh things and input it all meticulously.
And I think we haven't heard from Daniela yet.
Sorry, should have passed.
Yeah, and I managed to fix the mic, which I'm really
yay!
I'm not very techy. I'm Daniela. I run Colindale Community Garden, also quite a small garden. We basically got a large commercial-sized polytunnel, very contaminated land, which is annoying. And we're on the same side as the food bank, and we grow everything for them, pretty much. And I've just come back from there, so I'm a little bit tired. But you know, I had like 12 youth from the church today. It was quite exhausting. But they're very nice kids. Anyway, I'll stop talking now.
Thanks, Daniela. And John, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. Hi, everyone. I'm from Sow the City in Manchester, and we do lots of food growing projects, but we also manage the Manchester's food growing network, which is called Growing Manchester.
Fab, thanks, John. And Emma's joined us.
Hi, sorry I got held up in another meeting.
Hi, Emma. We've just done some brief introductions, so we wondered if you'd be happy to introduce yourself.
Yeah, of course. I'm Emma Mackey and I'm from Food Carlisle. We're the SFP partnership up in the north of England. Hopefully soon to be Food Cumberland, but we'll see.
Brill. Thanks so much, everyone. That was really nice to hear everyone introduce themselves. I've just put Sow the City in the website for Sow the City in the chat. And Bella, can we do the same for Carlisle? Fab. So yeah, thanks so much for your time this afternoon. As we kind of mentioned in the email, this is quite a kind of informal session and a little bit of an exploratory session as well, to look at the Harvest-ometer tool, which I think is a really fab online tool that's been around for a little while. Kind of started off with the Capital Growth Network and then kind of rolled it out across the Good to Grow, as Bella was explaining, the kind of wider Good to Grow network. Yeah, it basically, for those of you, I think everybody here actually on the call uses the Harvest-ometer to some degree. And so you'll know that it's really useful for tracking how much food you're growing. And it kind of makes these clever kind of conversions into how much money you've saved, and also how many meals that kind of converts into. So really kind of powerful tool in terms of kind of showing also collectively across different networks how much food community gardens are growing and the potential for growing food. But now, thanks to John from Sow the City, who's been working alongside Bella, we've got an even, like, the tool is even more clever. And it can show gardens how much CO2 they're saving. And I'll kind of let John explain that in more detail in a moment. But hopefully, yeah, we're just excited to make a little bit of noise about the kind of updated or additional layer to the tool. And we'd really like to roll it out across the network and kind of get a little bit more interest in the tool and kind of more uptake for gardens to kind of demonstrate how much they're growing, and also, you know, the impact that they're making in addressing the climate and nature emergency as well, and kind of demonstrating the potential to kind of save CO2. So that's kind of on the calculation. It's kind of compared to, it's based on kind of growing your own compared to what the equivalent produce that you would get from the supermarkets. So we'll go into that in a bit more detail in a bit, but I just wanted to check in about this afternoon and just kind of what we're hoping to cover. So we're just going to discuss a little bit of user experience, find out kind of user experience about the Harvest-ometer. I'm actually going to pick on Wendy, who doesn't know this yet, who is an avid Harvest-ometer user, just to kind of get from her a little bit of insight on, you know, how she finds the tool and how she's used it up till now, and what she rates about it and how she uses it or what it's useful for. So just a few kind of insights from Wendy, and then we're going to hear from John about the kind of about the additional layer to the tool now, and who can tell us a little bit more about what this all means about kind of demonstrating carbon saved and how he's come up with those different estimates. And then kind of finally, what we'd really like to do later in the hour is talk about how we hope you're all quite willing and up for taking on the Harvest-ometer in an even bigger way maybe than you already do, and kind of recording your harvest through the summer, and yeah, perhaps some ideas about autumn events as well, to share some of those findings, some of those figures, and kind of try and cascade that across the networks and engage more gardens and more community gardens to take up the Harvest-ometer tool. Bella, have I just about covered? Is there anything else that needs covering at this point before we hand over to Wendy?
No, I think that sounds good. Thanks, Fee.
Fab. Wendy, do you mind us picking on you?
No, although I don't really know what to say, because I think you've said it all, but I was literally just inputting the stuff from the garden because the numbers are in my head and I needed to get them down. But I have done all of my own back garden stuff up until the end of June. Like, shall I share my screen and then I can kind of just talk through what I've done in the different years?
That sounds great.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can do it because I'm not a host.
Oh yeah, let me make you co-host.
Bella will make you co-host and then you'll be able to share your screen. Yeah, that's a great idea, Wendy. Thank you.
Because it's just, I think when you grow on a slightly smaller scale as well, like just like allotment size, I've got lots of different things, so it might just look a bit more interesting than just really at the community garden we just grow salads mainly. Has that now worked?
You should be all right now.
Can I make this work? Share. Is that there?
Yep, it is.
Right, minimize this. So this is what I tend to input it monthly. So you'll see the strawberries down to new potatoes. That's what I harvested in throughout the month of June, and then I just kind of jot it all down on a bit of paper, and then I just input it all as a one monthly figure. So I think if I did it properly, I could do it as I harvest. But sometimes I'm getting like 20 grams of basil or 50 grams of salad, and it probably feels a little bit much to do it on a harvest by harvest basis. So I do it monthly. I could maybe do it weekly. And then at the end of the year, if I look at my spreadsheet, I think I wondered if the carbon was going to go down here actually in the total section, so I can see it all tallied up. I have been sad enough to take this and put it into a spreadsheet to see what my total is. Which I think was 6,000 grams, which sounds quite a lot. And I had cute chicken, so I have some eggs as well, which is quite a lot of my total. But I think I'd had like 6 kilos of carbon, and I thought that seemed quite high. So I'm looking forward to hearing a bit more about how the numbers are reduced to go in there. Like, can you still see the spreadsheet now? Can you see my spreadsheet or not?
No, we're still on your Harvest-ometer login, dashboard.
And that's it. So I liked being able to flick through the different seasons. I've been doing it since 2013.
Oh wow!
So that was a smaller
Wendy,
garden.
and Wendy, just a quick question: have you noticed that we've populated the list of veg and fruits with more items recently?
Yeah, I think
okay,
in the past I struggled to put in things like, I think kohlrabi, but is that there now?
Yeah.
There we go. It's not always like, I don't always know exactly where I'm looking for things. Like I tend to do quite a lot of mixed salads, and it's under salad leaves mix. Sometimes there's a little bit of looking around for what I want, but I usually find it eventually. I think one thing I did struggle with recently was sprouting seeds. I'd done some bean sprouts, I think, early in the year, and I ended up having to put it under just beans. So you can usually find a place to put something. But yeah, it's just really interesting. Like I like data, I like numbers. So I look back each year, and since I moved house in 2018, so it's been slightly different since 2018, but I can see that it was a good year for this or a bad year for that, or I gave this much space and it gave me this much yield. So I think from a community perspective, if you're trying to increase your yield, you can have a look back at what's happened over different seasons, and help you make decisions for what to do in the next growing year. If you can see down here, so last year was a difficult year, wasn't it? I lost all of my potatoes and tomatoes virtually, so I was a bit lower at 60 kilos. But the year before, that's because I'm in 2018. So if I go to 22, I did 170 this year, so I was very pleased with that. But that was me having an apple tree that was on its biennial, giving me tons of apples. But I think I did over 100 from my fruit and veg. So it's really good to see it all add up, and it shows you what you've what's been the goods and the bad things over the year. So I find it really useful. I don't spend a lot of time on it. I'm trying to find my way back to you all so I can see your faces, but I can't find my way back.
Before you leave, Wendy, would you mind just clicking on the graph view up at the top right, just so we can show that we have now included carbon on that. So where it says all produce at the top, if you, on weights next to all produce, and then you can do CO2 saved.
Wow.
And so now we do have the graphs for the carbon as well, and that's all done retrospectively too. So that's been updated. The totals that you were saying about before on the bottom right, we're in the process of having the data shown there. And on the spreadsheet that you can download that you were showing us, that's now got the carbon input in there as well. So we've got most of it updated. There's a couple of tweaks left to do as well, and we'll be updating the information page about how to use the Harvest-ometer with updated screenshots as well and stuff about the carbon. So a couple more tweaks to do, but the kind of bulky bit's done. So you have got your graphs and the data sets now.
Great. Yes.
Thanks for that, Wendy.
Don't really use the graphs. I should do, shouldn't I? They're nice.
I just have a little question now also, Wendy, for you, which is because I think this came up in conversation recently. So perhaps, I don't know whether with Incredible Edible Barnet kind of more broadly, and maybe during the pandemic as well, because you participated with the Community Harvest Initiative, did you use this data at any point to I don't know, show the council or in funding applications, or have you found it useful to kind of demonstrate the value of the food growing initiatives in Barnet?
I haven't, because I don't really need to fundraise, but I think if I did, I definitely would. Okay. Everybody wants to know numbers, don't they, of how many people are you feeding, and how many potatoes did you grow this year? So in the year that I had allotment, so this is my own back garden, I've got a different account to log in for the community garden, and I think I used, in the year that I had the allotment, I obviously got a lot more because we grew potatoes and pumpkins and beans and heavier things, and it was really impactful at that moment to add it all up. And I think so I grew about 300 kilos, and then I also collected 300 kilos roughly from the rest of the allotment. So in a short period of time, for us to collect almost half a ton of food and provide that into food banks, if I was doing that on a regular basis, because that was my model and I needed to raise money to allow me to do it every year, it would be amazing. That isn't my model, so I haven't needed to do that. But yeah, it's definitely useful data. Everything comes back to data, unfortunately, nowadays, doesn't it? We've got to show the impact that we're having, and this is a way of giving it some life.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks so much, Wendy. And I don't know if anyone else has anything else to add about how they already use the Harvest-ometer, or how they've found it useful, or any things that they've, any other kind of feedback, I suppose. No, silence.
We actually only have John until 15:15, so it might be a good idea anyway for us to zip on to John and then come back to some questions about using the Harvest-ometer, if that works for everyone.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah,
John.
well, thanks for inviting me along to this. I've got another meeting at 5:15, which is why I'm calling in, which I've got to do face to face. But I've got 20 minutes or so, 25 minutes to talk now, and I'll make sure there's time to ask any questions and answer any questions at the end as well. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a background to this. Some of you probably know some of that already, and then I'm going to get into the detail of what we've actually done and how we've done it. So first of all, I work for this social enterprise called Sow the City. We manage the Good to Grow map in Manchester and some food growing networks in Manchester, Greater Manchester actually. And before running So the City used to work for Transport for Greater Manchester, and I was involved doing the carbon footprinting of transport in Manchester. So we've kind of got a background, or I've got a background of doing this kind of work, although yeah, not so much recently. So as you're probably aware, there's lots of differences in the carbon footprint of different types of food. So red meat is particularly high, so it'd be about 20 kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalent per kilogram of product, but something like potatoes might be around 0.5 kilograms of CO2 equivalent. And when we say CO2 equivalent, we mean all the greenhouse gases converted into what would be CO2, because you may have heard that some greenhouse gases are a lot more powerful than others, for example, methane. So what you can do is get these figures from a whole variety of sources, and I'll explain where we've got our numbers from in a minute, and you can start to develop a carbon footprint per weight of product that's being grown. And crucially, what we're saying, and I think Fee said it before, is we're comparing to if you would have bought that product from the supermarket. So all of these figures are coming from that kind of difference. The carbon footprint of food, or fruit and vegetables, we'll sort of home in on that, is from production. So that would be at the farm, fertilizer, pesticides, animal feed, water, other materials, electricity, for example, maybe gas, processing in the sort of centres that are processing all of that fruit and veg, transportation, of course, and then some elements of storage as well, and refrigeration. And we have looked at the carbon footprint before this tool was invented of one of the community allotments that we work at, which is called Moss Side Community Allotment, just south of Manchester City Centre. And we calculated that their carbon savings for, it wasn't even a whole year actually, I think it was March until something like November, so the bulk of the kind of harvesting season, I guess, was 0.5 ton of CO2 just from that one site. And that site, it's solar powered. Most of the people walk and cycle there. So yeah, that you would call a carbon negative site, because they are producing products which would have had to have been bought from supermarkets, and therefore saving, I guess, in total the carbon footprint of the Manchester area, for example. That is, there's a couple of assumptions there that you maybe have picked up on. One is that they don't have a carbon footprint themselves from transportation and from energy use. A lot of the sites that we work at don't actually, but what it's important to say is that this tool that we've developed with Sustain is not a carbon footprinting tool for a community garden. It's simply just identifying the carbon savings compared to buying that produce at the supermarket for the produce that's produced, if that makes any sense. Is everybody still with me now? Just because I can't see you, I've got to a bit of a pause because I was going to go on to the next bit.
We're all
Everyone
here,
there?
John, don't worry.
Okay, cool. Right. So our brief from Sustain, I'm about halfway through now, was to develop a list of the carbon savings per weight measure for all the Harvest-ometer list of produce that you have on there. And I think there's something like 115 different things on there. Now, quite a lot of them are a little bit esoteric. And we've got things like sorrel on there. There's some kind of herbs and things. What was quite difficult for us was to be able to find anybody that had done some research on the carbon footprint of, I guess, buying sorrel from the supermarket. I'm not sure you can even do that. So we've had to make quite a lot of assumptions, which is very normal, by the way, in carbon footprinting. You'll find that everybody is doing it, and we do quite a bit of carbon footprinting of places like schools, actually, as a separate bit of work that we work on. And we have also had to use a variety of different data sources. There isn't one perfect one. So the government don't just produce this, you know, sort of miracle list of figures that you can use for this. They do actually in other areas, so they're quite good at that. In the transport area, for example, you can get quite accurate data on the carbon footprint of different types of car, for example, and using the train and trams and all that sort of stuff. So we have used a report by the WWF, but it's from 2009. That was one of our main sources. One of the advantages of that is it's actually data from the UK, because of course there's lots of research, but not all of it is from the UK. So we tried to prioritize that. That kind of, we had a kind of a hierarchy of which data source to use. So we went for UK studies as our kind of priority. But if we couldn't find something on that, then we would look for studies from the rest of the world to kind of fill in the gaps, basically. So that is kind of it, really. I mean, I you know, there's a couple of other things maybe I just wanted to point out. One is, of course, that growing fruit and veg is, you know, fruit and vegetables is a very small portion if you are, you know, a meat eater or a flexitarian, of your carbon footprint as a person. But there is some research that shows that people who grow their own fruit and veg, and I think probably the people that are in this meeting probably do that, and find that you actually eat more of it. And I think it's not beyond the realms of doubt that you would start to maybe change your diet slightly if you have a large amount of fruit and vegetables and possibly eat less meat. So I think there's an interesting kind of aspect that, you know, you might be making fairly marginal savings on your carbon footprint, but actually that might encourage different behaviors with you. There's also an aspect of it that I think that going and growing fruit and veg is like a leisure activity. And one of the biggest uses of travel and cars is leisure. It's not commuting, actually. I think leisure is the biggest one. It's something like 40–50% of the carbon footprint of transport is leisure. And again, if you're going and doing this sort of stuff as leisure, it may be that there's savings in other areas as well. And the other point I wanted to make was, you were talking about funding before. You know, the Harvest-ometer we've used as an example for funding, particularly in obviously projects that relate to food insecurity, because it shows savings in pounds. But I see a lot of potential with using this with carbon, you know, a carbon footprint and kind of a carbon impact measurement for funding, particularly at the moment. And we had it was the head of climate change from the National Lottery came to see Moss Side Community Allotment and was, you know, really interested in this kind of tool. So I do see a lot of potential as well with that side of things. And that was it, really.
Thanks, John. That's really helpful. Yeah, thank you for going through that. I can imagine it was very complicated behind the scenes, so thank you for making it so understandable. I've shared a link in the chat to the main report John was talking about, but also to where you can find his notes about the methodology on the Good to Grow website. Does anyone have any questions for John about that at all?
I've got a more general question, and it's really about the point that John was making at the end about meat. It's good to see the numbers that you're generating, but I think the whole point is that if you eat more vegetables, you eat less meat. And I don't know if there's anything that the Harvest-ometer can do with that. It doesn't necessarily have to be within it, but it could be an extra kind of add-on. If you ate this instead of, you would have this kind of impact, and then the people's numbers would jump so much more, and it might encourage them. Has that been considered, or is it feasible?
John,
I mean, I Yeah, maybe Bella's better to answer that. I think it's a sort of technical question about the system a little bit, but yeah, I mean the research I was mentioning about whether there's a behaviour change in people, I don't know if that's kind of particularly proven, but I think there is a little bit of evidence that that's the case. I know, Bella, we were going to do like a comparative bit when we discussed this initially, where we were going to say, and that's equivalent to, X number of miles driving in a car or something. So maybe there's an opportunity there somehow with this, to say, I don't know, that's equivalent to, maybe doing some comparative stuff on maybe in.
Yeah, that's a really good point, John, and thanks for bringing that up. I think we'll probably touch on this again in a second, but at the minute we're working on sort of a reasonable estimate figure for the carbon savings across the Good to Grow network annually, and then maybe cumulatively since the network's been about, and also a separate one for the London network. And precisely as John says, the plan is with that to sort of translate the kilograms of CO2 into kind of very strong images of a comparative carbon saving, something like cars off the road or square miles of forest. But we're waiting till we see the numbers to work out what's the best image for that. But hopefully, and we'll talk about this next in terms of what we're hoping you guys might be able to do over the next few months, and asking how we can support that. It might be that we could try and produce some social media assets that you guys will also be able to use to frame your savings in those kind of lights as well, and find the metaphors and the comparisons to kind of bring those figures to life. More directly to your question, Wendy, it's a really good point. And I wonder, particularly with things like the legumes that might go into Harvest-ometer, there could be a kind of gram for gram of protein comparison of CO2 savings fairly easily done, I should think. Our brilliant website designer has just done all of this, so I'd have to go back to him and ask really nicely. But definitely as a next step on this, maybe that could be a good way to approach it in terms of switching out protein sources, because we do have people recording lots of legumes on there. So that's a really good point that I'll definitely take a note of and take back to the team.
No, it's probably a stage.
Just a slightly, because it might. Another idea, which isn't related to this at all, but is that we do this installation called the Carbon Supermarket, which we've been doing for a while, and that has been really effective at having discussions with people about this issue. And what we have is a supermarket till, which we've programmed to have carbon in it, and we're going to be using the same figures, by the way, as what are in the Harvest-ometer. But we also have other products in there: meat, fish, cereal, milk, etc. And we've set up we're doing it at Manchester Science Festival. We did it last year as well. Over 10 days, we have like a market stall where you can come and buy things, but you have a carbon budget, which obviously doesn't go very far if you start to buy meat, and you can sort of really see those figures because we sort of have those on display. So just another idea to kind of throw out there. It's not obviously related to this, but I totally agree that the comparison is where the kind of really interesting stuff is, actually, because people are blown away by the differences that you're talking about. A kilogram of meat is like driving from Manchester to London in a car, for example.
Wendy, were you going to say something as well?
Was I? It just made me think about food waste as well, I think, because I think if you grow your own, you're less likely to waste it. You eat your wonky carrots and you eat your holy chard, but I don't know how that kind of links in with carbon saving as well. Like, can you just take a third of your food diet or add a third to the carbon impact of your food diet, because that's typically what's wasted? But I can't link that into the Harvest-ometer. My brain's ticking away.
I think, Wendy, the waste in the figures that we've done for Sustain, the waste at the farm end is factored in. But
Okay.
if you mean the waste at the household end, that's not factored in. And so that's a really good point. And you could argue that, I mean, what it's meant to be about a third of foods wasted or a quarter or whatever. You could argue that the figures that we've proposed, you know, should have another 25% or 33% added on to them, because actually, you know, some of that food isn't even going to get eaten. So no, we haven't really included that, actually, because what we've looked at with the figures is just from the farm to the supermarket, not anything after that, and not any emissions related to the actual the fact that that waste then has to be you know, taken away in a vehicle and disposed of as well. So there's a carbon footprint there as well, which I think is pretty negligible, actually, is less than obviously the production, refrigeration, transport, etc. But it is still something, you know.
It's vast when you start digging into it, isn't it?
Yeah, enormous. Has anyone else got any questions for the minute? No. In that case, while we've still got John for 5 minutes, I might quickly charge ahead on to letting you guys know what it is we're asking for and why we've invited you all here, if that's all right. So I will share my screen really quickly, and yeah, John, do just leave whenever you need to, of course. Yeah, basically I've got the shopping list here of everything we're wanting, but the idea is we've got this brilliant new functionality on the Harvest-ometer. We're sort of already a good chunk of the way through the season, so whilst we're hoping this will spur the gardens in the network on to start using it and have some use out of it, we kind of appreciate maybe now isn't the best time to do kind of a big snazzy launch for everyone, because we're halfway through the year. So instead, what we're hoping to do is start to get a little bit of rumbling and a little bit of excitement and a little bit of making the case, I suppose, and showing the value of this brilliant new data set that we're going to have to hand thanks to John and his colleagues' work. So basically what we're hoping to have from you guys, and in your case, Emma and John, the gardens in your networks, is that in the coming weeks and months, if you could start to keep a fairly regular record of your harvests using the Harvest-ometer, then we'll start to build up a really nice data set for each of your gardens of what a realistic figure might be of the harvests you're collecting and therefore the carbon you might be saving. Whilst you're doing that, we're going to have these figures I mentioned before of estimates kind of more widely across the network that we'd like to start sharing a little bit on social media, so people do start to see this new function we have on the tool. So if you're able to support us with communications around that, so little shares on social media of our news story and of some assets we should have shouting about the number, that would be brilliant too. While you're at it, taking some nice photos of the harvests you're doing is always greatly appreciated, so that when it does come to us shouting about all of your great work, we've got lovely photos of all your hard work to share as well. And then a bit we're really excited about is if you'd be willing come autumn to be prepared to take part in an event. So in the case of the London gardens here, that's Urban Harvest, which Fee is already in communication with you about, or will explain more about. In the case of Emma and John, I've already spoken to you about, you've already got events coming up in autumn that you could pin this to, and the gardens that take part in this way could take part in those events and use those events as a chance to celebrate the findings from the data that they've hopefully been collecting in the months leading up, if that makes sense. So basically there should already in Carlisle, Manchester and London be autumn events planned in the gardening networks anyway. So if you can segue a little celebration into those events, and if gardens are willing to take part in that, then that'll be a lovely opportunity to look at the cumulative figures from your gardens and celebrate the carbon savings that you've been making in that time. So alongside that, if you'd all be willing to make a little bit of noise on social media building up to the event and in the aftermath about some of these findings, we'll be providing social media assets for that. And then finally, if you'd potentially be happy to be quoted for a story or used as a case study, if we do any follow-up work around this, and in preparation for launching properly at the start of next season, that would be really helpful too. So these are sort of the main things we're asking of you. So basically saving data, a little bit of social media stuff, and then having a little party in autumn that hopefully you're already expecting anyway, where you can shout a little bit about the carbon savings you found you're making. Then that's the long and short of it, really. If that's confusing in any way, please raise your hand and bombard me with questions.
I'm not confused so much as a question. Where do I get hold of that presentation? Because I need to pass this on to colleagues.
I can send that round straight after this, no problem.
Super. And sorry, you said everyone here is using the Harvest-ometer. I haven't been. I only heard about it 2 days ago. But someone has been making us measure our harvest. Someone has got an eye to fundraising in the future. And so I think this is great. Do I have to sign up for it somewhere or sign in to get to
Tony, you're a member of Good to Grow. So Let's Grow Brent so you're a Capital Growth member, so the London network. And so whoever's got the login details for the online member dashboards, that's where you do.
Fine. I need to get hold of Beth.
Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed.
And also, Tony just reminded me that Chris, who's our grower at the allotment gardens at the Royal Parks, he shared with some of us a little, I mean, it's very simple, but I think it was quite helpful. It was a bit of a paper kind of record sheet. And he said that he and his volunteers use that in the week. And like Wendy, he then updates the Harvest-ometer online monthly. So if that's helpful, I can share that as well with this group. I'll ask Chris to send it to us again.
Is there anyone else here who might need a hand just knowing how to get to the Harvest-ometer? And Tony, if Beth isn't sure, if it's Beth with access and isn't sure, then Beth can absolutely get in touch with Fiona or myself, and we'd be very happy to explain how to get to it and use it.
Hi, it's not a Harvest-ometer question though.
No problem, Julie. Do fire away.
Yeah, okay. It was a question, because of the nature of our business, we don't open to the public. So we can't be running a harvest event at our place, but I was thinking we've got some lovely neighbours, and one of our lovely neighbours is Spitalfields City Farm, so I don't know if they're involved with you, or I could go along to somebody else's event and talk about Harvest-ometer, so happy to do that.
That sounds perfect, Julie. And I think when Bella was talking about harvest events, we don't want to put, it's not to put too much pressure on everybody. If you are joining in with Urban Harvest and you're planning a kind of activity, great. If not, come along to something else. Or like Bella was describing, we can also do a little bit of a social media campaign. We can share your stories via social media, or potentially a blog, or so there's lots of different ways to kind of to make some noise and celebrate your achievements as well. So that's fine. We'll find whatever way, whatever's appropriate for different settings.
Thank you. Good to know.
Can I quickly check, because they're in a slightly different position. They're coordinators rather than gardens. Emma and John, especially while you're still here, John, is that clear to you what we're thinking of doing? Because this will obviously involve you engaging a few gardens from your networks rather than saving the data yourself.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's not an issue on our end. We're really bad. We take all the pictures and never do the weights. So we need to get better on doing that. And we've got quite a lot of school children involved at the moment. So I think that'll be interesting for them to then go back to school and work out how the calculator and explain that to them. I think they'd be really interested in that. Just because it's school holidays, they couldn't come along today. That's all. Someone happy to feed that back to them.
Brilliant. Thanks, Emma. That's great to hear. I don't know if you're still there, John. You might have already had to head off. No problem. That's fine. Sorry for interjecting. Do carry on if anyone else has any other questions or ideas.
Can I just say how I use the data? I thought it might be of general interest. I mean, we are a homeless charity in the East End, and we take sort of medium risk clients. So we rely a lot on charitable giving. We have 8 in the fundraising team. So, you know, it is quite a big chunk of what we do. So the data is submitted to a senior manager by myself every 2 weeks. So the organisation and all fundraisers know all the time what's being raised. We also have a lot of stakeholders. We have a lot of corporate involvement, and we have the clients themselves. So I'm meeting a need with the data. I have the data actually on a blackboard near where we do the weighing, and it works really well. So it'll say tomatoes and it will say 500 grams or whatever it is. So, you know, you've got that, and anybody's walking through can see how much we've picked each week. And I think that's good. And I'm thinking of expanding that so that there's a board for a yearly total as well. So anyone who walks into our area, and we get lots of visitors, more so now anyway, can see at a glance what we've done.
That's brilliant. That's great to hear. Yeah, that how helpful it can be, because I do appreciate not in all circumstances, Harvest-ometer isn't always a practical use of time for community gardens that have lots of other things on their hands. So yeah, we do appreciate that it's not always top of everyone's list, which is why it would be really nice if there are a few gardens in these 3 areas over the next couple of months that do have the time and interest, and to gather a bit more of a concise data set, so we know that it's kind of a fairly good representation of what is going on in those gardens. Yeah, and hopefully it'll be kind of mutually beneficial for anyone taking part as well, because the figures at the end should be quite exciting to see, and we'll try and make those resources quite snazzy for you to share on social media to show off about it. We were going to ask if there's any particular needs that you foresee and what you might want in terms of resources for talking about the events and things on social media.
We use social media a lot, weekly. So, you know, we have somebody, we were very lucky, we have a full-time member of staff that's doing this social media. So yeah, so nice pictures are something I take on almost on a daily basis, and stories, and yeah. So, but it would be lovely if perhaps we could include you in them as well, or whichever you want to do anyway, so, just so you know.
Sounds good, Julie.
So in terms of next steps then, Bella, you're going to share the presentation from today, and that will be helpful for people like Tony to share with the rest of their groups. And then anyone who needs any additional support kind of using the tool, come back to me or Bella for any practical support. But Bella, is it kind of a case of just cracking on and using the tool? I mean, so I'm talking specifically for the London gardens that are here today, and then for Emma to bring back that message to the networks in Carlisle. Is that the idea is really just get cracking? If you're not already, please track your track what you're growing and input it on the Harvest-ometer. And then kind of later in the summer, we'll be in touch with some prompts for things to share in September.
Precisely, yeah, precisely. And in the case of Emma and John, if there's anything you want us to be sharing about your upcoming autumn events to build that into the sort of social media campaign around the excitement of this data we're collecting, then do send that our way as well when those details come. But yeah, exactly, just crack on, get some of that data coming in if you're able, and yeah, and do get in touch if you have any questions at all, if there's anything we can do.
In the meantime, can we share some sample tweets, Bella, with folks on the call today? And like Julie was talking about, you know, on your social media channels, please feel free to kind of already kind of make some noise about the fact that you're using the Harvest-ometer and excited to share some of the data kind of during September, kind of later in September. And there was something else I was thinking about. Oh, I wondered whether for the London gardens here today, should we continue using the email thread? And that might kind of just help us. Yeah, it might be a nice source of like just checking in as well. Yeah, I don't know whether that would be useful, or maybe kind of closer to later in the summer, we can start to kind of revive it again, because hopefully we'll have a little bit more data at that point.
I've just joined the Slack group, but I've got to work out how to use it now.
That's right. Tony's a member of our community garden group, and the lovely Maya, who's my colleague at Capital Growth, is a big fan of Slack, and so she's got us all using Slack, which is really fun. But I think the rest of us are newbies, aren't we, Tony? Great. I don't know if anyone, yeah, Bella, I don't know if anyone has anything more to say or to ask, or
no. Cool. Well, should we wrap up there then? And we'll get those slides and those sample tweets and those printouts to you as well for collecting harvest data. Brilliant. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Really nice to see you all.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. And yeah, can't wait to check in again in a few weeks' time.
I'm off to go water now.
Such a funny day today, isn't it?
Constant.